All hail the American night. Is everybody in?
Is everybody in? Shuffling Notes is about to begin, and I'm your co-host Razi,
And I'm your co-host, Prankit.
and we are gathered today to discuss an artist, a legend, a god of rock, Jim Morrison, and an album called An American Prayer, which is the birth, life, and death of Jim Morrison. And the music is given by The Doors. The recording was done, obviously, before Jim Morrison's demise. That was in 1971. The recording was done in 1969, 1970. And that's how then the Doors, the remaining members, they regrouped. They got together. They were just like, we have to do this for Jim Morrison. And they just created something more of a biography or an autobiography, well, let's say autobiography, in the form of music. And it's enchanting, it's hypnotizing. It's a lot more than just words and lyrics and music, and it's more about what he saw, what he wanted us to see, how the band worked together to create the kind of music that we hear and love today. I think this was the first introduction for you to this. You've heard this before, I'm sure, but
I mean, we should probably preface by saying that you're a much bigger Jim Morrison fan. I've heard Doors songs here and there, and I'm familiar with them a little bit, mostly because of you. And I think this album really is the first time I've actually sat down and listened to a whole album that has Jim Morrison in it. Because I've heard, and even in this album, as when we'll go through the track list, there were songs that I had heard before, and I didn't even know that this was done after his death. And that was interesting. But yeah, I think you'll have a lot more insight in this one.
Rather than diving into the history, I mean, there is obviously a story behind each of the track that we will be going through. And I think rather than diving into the history, it's more about what we will be seeing in what was spoken at the time. And it was actually the recording of this set of poems by Jim Morrison was recorded on his birthday, when he just came into studio, I think with producer John Haney, and they just came into studio, they started recording, and John Haney was like, it's your birthday, what do you want to do? And he just said, I just want to record poetry, I just want to recite my words. And he didn't want music, he didn't want he just wanted his voice to be heard other than a rock star that he had got on through his previous Doors journeys and songs and chart hits and whatnot. And so I think I can go really deep and talk about Jim Morrison.
I'm curious. I don't know if you have the answer to this, but was the poetries that he recorded, in 69, 70, were they ever released at that time just as poetry, or was that just on recording until this album came out, if that makes sense?
So
do you know about that?
As I briefly read, John Haney, the producer, or I think the sound engineer, was someone who used to work many a times with Elektra Records and was a part of the Doors since Waiting for the Sun, I think. So he was there, and it was his idea to get Jim's words together, and Jim kind of knew that, or so does he say in his in an article that I was reading, that he knew, that Jim knew that he was trying to do something with, Jim's words, and that he wanted to do something different other than what Doors used to do, and Jim was happy to help him
So
out.
at the time when, so at the time when it was recorded, especially Jim's part, he sort of knew that something's gonna come out of it, but it wasn't clear what exactly it would. The intention wasn't to just release his spoken words as it is. There was always some sort of intention to do something with that, I suppose.
I think so.
I mean, we're probably speculating now more than
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was like a final goal with these tapes.
Yeah.
But I think it was something that this John Haney was trying to compile something together, where, because he saw Jim Morrison and they shared like this, as he said, unspoken conversations that they had, and these smiles they shared, and he just kind of understood the not a star that Jim Morrison was, if I'm making sense, right?
Sort of.
But I'm trying. I'm just too excited.
Yeah.
So let's just go into Jim's life and see. I wish, at this point, I would rather conjoin my fandoms and say, I wish I was Clara Oswald, the impossible souffle girl, and just go in that timeline and like be there at every stage and just kind of witness it all. I don't, because every incident,
nice Doctor Who reference in there,
every incident has it's,
in that analogy, the Doctor would be Jim Morrison and you would be Clara Oswald.
Nah, I'm happy with that.
Jump into his timeline.
I mean, I'm sure BBC would love to have that. So, so we begin with Jim's birth. And he's in his own words, in his own voice, he's inviting people together to start a ceremony, which over here in this album is his life, and his I don't know, just his existence, just his first existence in the world, and inviting to the ceremony of birth, life, death all together. I don't know. And I don't. Do you recall anything from this very short Awake?
I mean, I when I heard it, I instantly recognized it, because I had definitely heard. I think for me, like Awake, and then I think the songs that come after it, like Ghost Song and Dawn's Highway, sort of plays together as like a singular song, and Newborn Awakening. But I had definitely heard this chunk of these songs together. I just didn't know they were separate songs, and I didn't know they're from this album, so I recognized it instantly. And very interesting way to start the song. It sort of starts with like this live recording sort of.
It
really gives it the feeling that he's alive.
So I mean, the band members, when they came into making the music for this, so the band broke up after 2 albums post Jim Morrison's death, and I don't know, I'm a fan. His death, I would say, I don't know, maybe as the band members themselves say, maybe he's in Africa, and you never know. Maybe he's in the Himalayas, you never know.
Yeah.
So
some sort of conspiracy theory still going around.
I mean, that's welcome to the Club 27. It's just there are parts of the album which are taken from live performances, and most of it is from this 69-70 recording, but some parts are taken from different live performances where he's reciting, different words, and they've just brought it all together in a very melodious, as well as eye-opening way. Like, I think this album kind of very clearly and very in layman language kind of shows what Jim Morrison was aiming to show, since he thought, or since he had the idea that, that they are to be the doors of perception, right? And the doors of perception, once the doors of perception are cleansed, man will see as things are infinite. That's the quote by William Blake that Morrison took, and that's how the band started. Of course, we'll be going through that journey. Well, we'll be going through that forward journey backwards, but I guess it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, it does feel like, and the first few songs together, I'm just gonna talk about them. It's like, it does feel that's Jim Morrison at his most raw, because it's just poetry and he's speaking it. It's just, even though the way the album is done, it was after his death, and the music and everything, it still feels this is probably one of the more raw Jim Morrison you're hearing here. It's just him talking 90% of the time, and also because what really stands out is because it's really poetry as opposed to a song. Like, you could make the argument they're very similar, but because it's poetry, the lyrics are much more sort of like visual, in a sense of like a storytelling, aspect. So and he describes certain scenes, like as we get into Ghost Song and Dawn's Highway, when he describes things, he's very detailed. So it feels very different from like a typical song or a typical Doors song, even. It has this sort of very eerie feeling to it as well. And I want to say almost like, how like some occult textbooks, they're supposed to have hidden meaning behind a meaning. It's all sort of in symbols and analogies, and what's written on the surface is not what it's like. It's almost like, when you look at occult books, it said like the authors take their secrets to the grave. You can't decode everything, and some of his writing in these songs feels a little bit, it reminds me of that type of text. It feels like Jim is revealing certain aspects, but there's certain secrets only he will know, which are still buried there in the lyrics, but it's just like
they're
almost
there,
impossible to decode.
they're definitely there. But I mean, you can,
but it's very it's in his own way. He hasn't made an effort so everyone is going to understand it. He's just put it out there, like
he's been very clear with what he saw, and that's what you take away. He's very clear, there's like a vivid imagery in his head, where he's just defining everything in both metaphorical as well as factual ways, right?
Exactly. So it's you have the surface, which is him describing his scenes, but then he puts these more abstract lines here and there, which you have to kind of really think like, what you can sort of break your brain trying to figure out what he's saying. But it's just it's one of those things where it still draws you in.
True. So after Awake, we've got Ghost Ship, which is just
crowd the young child, fragile,
it's like an introduction of, I don't know, ghost song, but in a kiddish, or a kid Jim Morrison way, as a child, how Jim Morrison would have seen things. And it's about life happening, evolving, realizations, and revolution. And which then follows through to Dawn's Highway, where I think that bit's an interview. It wasn't done in the recording itself.
I see. Yeah, that's quite cool.
So that bit's an interview, because I think that interview is available as well. I'll send you a link for it. But that interview is just, you kind of see it in him that it was the first time when it was probably one of the first makings of Jim Morrison as we know him today. Like the first time, as in his words, he tasted death. And well, tasted fear because he wasn't fearful of death.
Of Jim Morrison becoming Jim Morrison.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't taste death, he tasted fear, but eventually, as we go down, he kind of grows out of that fear into, well, the poet, the artist. So that follows Newborn Awakening, which also describes kind of some incidents of New Haven, where there were some incidents with the band's performance and Jim Morrison's performance. And I think that was the one, or was that the Miami incident? There's one live performance which is really very I don't know what's, not a negative word, but outstanding, I would say. Because outstanding in Jim Morrison's way, because there's so many versions of it. The band has different versions, the people have different versions, the media has different versions. But then again, quoting Morrison, who controls the media controls the mind. And I think it's just a Newborn Awakening is like a completing his birthing ritual. And we see a rising shaman over here. Like, that's, since there's an influence of the Native American community throughout since the beginning, and
very heavily. Very heavily.
I mean, that was his first fear, right? I mean, that's how he remembers it. So then we come on to come of age.
Can we resolve
and
the
get
past,
introduced to the
lurking
military child he
jaws
was,
of time?
and his school life, and I don't know, I think a description of something like a prom
They
night.
gave out free records to the best couple.
Yeah, it is very much like a short story sort of element, isn't it? To come of age, I think. It feels like he's telling these short stories.
So yeah, and his short stories are something that we can connect to in a I don't know, visual way, because it's that well described in his poetry rather than songs, is what also the band as well as Morrison wanted out of this album. Then we move on to Black Polished Chrome.
The music was new,
I think
black,
it's just
polished chrome.
High school life and, doing stuff as a high school.
I mean, Black Polished Chrome, and then even the one after Latino Chrome. I mean, they're all just kind of feel like this descriptions of things, like different descriptions. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, this type of thing I feel like can only really work with someone like Jim's voice and delivery. The way he talks about all these things, it really draws you in, because, like, I don't know too much about him, so for me it was, I don't know what exactly he's talking about, but the way he delivers the line and the way he's speaking and the way it's all layered together, I think it just draws me in as someone who is listening to it.
True. Yeah. And walked to his car, he saw the Chooks had written
F-U-C-K on his windshield.
So yeah, Latino Chrome, sorry, is also where the music changes to, like, something more relaxed, something more European, maybe. I don't know. Do you remember specifically from? I mean, yeah, I will
So
not
for
blame
me,
you.
the songs, yeah, for me to come of age, Black Polish Chrome, Latino
Right.
Chrome, and I think the next two as well, they're all sort of like one big song. So I can't remember at what point which one ends and one begins, because like the way I listened to them was sort of together. They worked like a singular song.
I mean, yeah, there are
Um,
about 30, 24, 25 songs
yeah,
in total.
yeah.
So
Well, the ways that they're distributed as well, unless you're looking at what's currently playing, sometimes it's hard to tell when one ends and the other
Yeah.
begins, because they so seamlessly continue on. It's like one long song.
I think they've purposely added that. There are songs where it ends with the what's that? What's the instrument called?
I'm not sure.
So let's just move to the next track, which is
Angels and Sailors, Rich Girls.
There's a feeling of sea in the beginning of the song, and then I was listening to some interviews by I think the interview, it was a radio documentary, and it's called No One Here Gets Out Alive. So that's where they were discussing this specific track as well, and there are lines or lines of imagery which Morrison is describing as, I think it's like jumped, humped, born to suffer, made to undress in the wilderness. That's basically lines on some women being tortured that he saw, and people around him, maybe his age, were not doing the right things, or I don't know. I won't say right or wrong in when I'm talking about Morrison. There's no right or wrong. It's like something, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's poetry.
I mean, it's all subjective.
And I think it just kind of covers
Yeah.
teenage dreams, love, sex, life, death.
Yeah, I was gonna. Do you know if there's a part in, I think this is in Angels and Sailors, that I don't know. Is that a different singer singing a song? You know, when he's like, I will never treat you mean, never start no kind of scene. I'll tell you every place and person that I've been. There's like a part, where they're singing, but I don't think that's Jim singing, right? That's someone else.
No,
I wasn't sure if that's like
Jim.
an existing song that got layered in, or is that something specific that they recorded? Is that okay? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure just by hearing if that part was.
It's just, I think.
Is it from another song of his? Or?
I think it's something. Yeah, I think he had. I mean, he had.
So they had like a recording of him singing this.
Diaries full of words, so he could have written anything, and just probably they just added that bit to this. And of course, Angels and Sailors then ends with hitting puberty, I think, with where he talks about this. The Spanish girl begins to bleed. She says her period. It's Catholic heaven.
It's Catholic heaven.
Just kind of an introduction to his life into a Christian family, because he didn't have a problem with it. He just kind of accepted it. It was that, I was accidentally born here. And that's why I wear a cross. So that was his well, I'm not sure of the reason, so yeah, let's not go into the history again. So then we've got Stoned
Out here
Immaculate.
we is stoned Immaculate.
I don't know, it's a song about drugs and introduction to drugs, introduction to the other side of life, where because it possibly is like him still reaching the age, or reaching his adult age, and then maybe exploring things. I don't know. I think I think we need to also cover this again, doing line by line. I don't know. I mean, maybe if you feel like we can.
Sure. Yeah. You
Yeah,
could
but
just do a
I
solo
mean,
video of you just reading
there's
his
more to
poetry.
just reading it, right? It's you if you really need to understand it, just
Yeah. Yeah.
just throw yourself into it. So yeah, so Stoned Immaculate then moves us to
The movie will begin in 5 moments, the mindless voice announced.
And I
Yeah.
if I'm guessing it right,
Yeah.
it's an excerpt from Cemetery Man, which is another piece he had written. And
Okay.
I uh, it's actually a recollection of an actual movie theater that the band I think was going into, because I remember Ray Manzarek talking about it and saying like what he says in poetic words is what we saw in life, and that I think that's kind of most of his poetry.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this song it's very much like just like an acid trip fueled, like, and I really like I think, you might remember, but I think this excerpt is from this song. You've seen your birth, your life, your death. You might recall all of the
You might
yeah. I
recall
just
all the
that whole
rest.
part, and then like where are you going to the other side of morning? But a lot of that writing, it
Please
really
don't
just
chase the
feels like
clouds,
he's
pagodas.
on this sort of acid trip journey, or almost like
Right.
yeah, it's
Right.
experiencing death in some way, or life after death in a way. Like, did you have a good world when you
Yeah.
died, enough to base a movie on? I thought.
I mean, I wish I could.
Yeah.
There's so many times I've wanted to say this to him, but I wish I can tell Jim, yes, yes, you did. You very successfully
Yeah.
did, and you've made your mark, I guess. Yeah, I think for the music in the movie, or the music that was included, the stereo inclusion feels very different from the rest of the
Is this
songs.
only in
Like,
the
I
remastered?
think there's
Because
a
I
part.
think the version that's on a lot of the streaming services, the remastered version, which has some additional tracks. I'm wondering whether the original release had any stereo in it, because I don't think. I think this was, because it'll be interesting to look into it, but I'm assuming this was only introduced in the remaster, which is the one with the bonus tracks. That also has, I think, some longer tracks. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, because so the recordings were like the voice recordings were done in mono. So it was done in mono so that John Haney, I don't remember if he was the producer or engineer, but he had the idea of doing it in mono because he wanted to play around more with it, have some room to experiment. So I guess we do hear his experiment as stereo over here. Yeah, so then we go on to Curses, Invocations.
Curses, Invocations.
It's introduction of the poet, I guess. It's going by Jim Morrison's life so far. This is where even the movie and this, like, that's sort of him stepping into his shoes, where he's working with rhymes, working with words. Although Jim Morrison had always been kind of obsessed with words since he was a child. Like, he used to write poetry about every new word he learned so that he could learn the word better.
Interesting, yeah.
So, I mean, so that, I think that was his
Yeah.
sister who said that. So yeah, so I mean, the poet part of you see in this Curses Invocations is he calls militant dandies.
My militant dandies
So
also.
you know so he's seeing the military life, and dandies is basically someone who is being, I think it means someone who's being forced to wear good clothes. So militant dandies is like a you know, again saying repeating words from the interview that I heard. His poetry is something which covers a paragraph in probably 4 words or less, or maybe 5 words. And I guess militant dandies is one great example that I could pick up. Of course, there's if we discuss when we discuss this line by line, we'll get
We'll make
to
a
that.
video on each separate track, just discussing that line by line.
Please do. I mean, I would love to be a part of it. And I think he's talking about an incident that occurred during. Oh yeah, so it ends with that, right? So it ends with something that I'll always be a word man.
I'll always be
Oh, yeah,
man.
yeah.
So
Better than Birdman.
that's I don't know if it's part of this piece of poetry, but while the band was recording or dubbing the music, there was a bird that flew in, and that bird just fluttered around the studio here and there, and then it flew out the window. I think it came through the door, flew out the window, something like that. And
Came through the door
they
while the
just-
doors were recording.
so so if you know Jim Morrison and you knew Jim Morrison as closely as these three, you would definitely take it as a sign that okay, that could have been Morrison, because you know birds have this significance of carrying, or you know, carrying a message with them or something like that, about, or carrying a soul with them maybe. So it was Jim's soul which came in, and they really felt blessed. And yeah, I really love that
that's
blessing.
a cool little anecdote. I'm surprised, like I'm constantly surprised by how much you know about all of this.
Let's not go there. Let's go there in the next one. I'm going to repeat that till you agree 100% that you'll do the next one.
It's in the contract.
So we go on to American Night. I'll tell Alfred to send one. Yeah. So we then go to American Night.
All hail
and
the
that's, I think,
American Night.
so this is the short American Night. Like I think it's just a few seconds. And we see Jim Morrison kind of stepping into Jim Morrison's life, you know, and the reaching the peak of those, because it adds the background with crowd cheering, like we want Jim Morrison, and you know, it's like a, and then this American Night, it ends with 3 sounds, and then Jim is like, what was that? And then and then he himself says, I don't know, it sounds like guns and
What was
thunder.
that?
I think that's like a salute to you know, the song we get into next, which is
Well, before you
Roadhouse
get into that, I
Blues,
just
the
wanted to
live
say that,
version
like,
of that.
I like that you have so much to say about it, because I just wrote one word for American Night, and it says tripping. That's basically what I have in my notes. American Night, tripping. Yeah.
But yeah, true. I mean, if you listen to a lot of songs, it's just tripping.
I mean, I love this album. It does feel like, you know, just an acid trip. in the sense of the visuals he
He
creates and the sort of things he talks about. But it's cool.
Yeah, I think the pieces he wrote were throughout time, throughout years, and this while he was recording this, there was another incident. So it was quite regular for Jim Morrison to come into the studio, and there was an Irish brand of whiskey that he really likes. I don't know if it's still there or not. You need to get one for me. So so Jim Morrison is just he walks in with a bottle of, it was his birthday, so John Haney gifted him this bottle of whiskey, and he's just sitting there. And so it's funny, John Haney set up the studio where he set up a mic where he wants the sound to be coming from, which was fixed, and he set up a dummy mic for Jim Morrison because he knew Jim Morrison eventually ends up falling over, or just hanging on to the mic or leaning.
Jim's shenanigans.
So he had prepared that, and he really, so the dummy mic was supposed to be Jim's the mouthpiece, and the other mic was recording from where he wanted the voice to come from. And I think, and then a lot of friends started coming over because it was Jim's birthday. And then a lot of friends started coming over. Then Jim is like, let's take a break, let's go get a taco. Then they went and got a taco, and they came back and they started recording again. And then they recorded till, well, Jim was on the floor.
Well, yeah.
Like, I think there were about 7 to 10 people by then, and he was just, he was kind to be willing to share the bottle of whiskey, but like everyone also knew that it's Jim's bottle and he doesn't really. So he's just saying it, but he won't.
Yeah.
Kind of
it's
thing.
His drink.
Like he was like, he's taking nibs and he's like, I'll give it to you. That eventually you just see him kind of, then he was just taken back and he continued his party somewhere else. But yeah, so that was in the studio. So going from American Night, we get back to Roadhouse Blues, which is, I think, it's also, I think, named as one of the best live performances of all time. I think at the time, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if there has been some better live performance or whatever, but yeah, that was some good.
Yeah. And I've heard this live version itself as well many times before. I think just on streaming services and things. So I instantly recognized it when it started playing. I was like, oh, I've heard this one before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so they've put this particular one because American Night flows through this because American Night gets the background cheering, like we want Jim, that sort of continues to this song, and then we hear the narrator being like, the guy who sets up the stage, he's like, from Los Angeles, California, the Doors, and then you get the Doors, and so why the band wanted this version there, because that's the reaction they always wanted from the fans, like from the audience. That's the kind of, and along with that, it was because Roadhouse Blues had this so there, I don't know, so there's this part where Jim just kind of rants. He's just into the music so much, he's not saying words. He's like, chow, chow, chow.
Yeah, he's just enjoying himself.
And then that goes on, I think, for about for a minute or something. And that's just, well, it's also crazy because you hear, I mean, I haven't found a video on this. Please, anyone who's watching this, everyone who's watching this, please do comment. the link
Have a
for the
video
video
source.
for this version of Roadhouse Blues.
Uh,
I would love to see it. And yeah, it's just, there's also the bit where he goes like, yeah, Pam, come on. So he's just lost
Yeah.
in the music. He's lost in that trance
and
so
the
much.
classic,
And
the all right also makes like an appearance, talking to the audience.
I mean,
it's very much Jim Morrison.
that's
I think it's like the
actually
Doors at
where,
their best, almost. Like Jim Morrison just being Jim Morrison.
the Doors at their peak,
just
yeah.
sort of in the moment, enjoying the music, and the audience enjoying the music. It's like, that's a live performance that you need to watch live. If you're there in that crowd, you're in this ceremony, so to speak. You're part of this energy or weird, like, it's its own thing. That very much is what a live performance really should be.
I mean, again, please, anyone who's watching.
I mean, is there
this-
even a video of it? Like, was this even recorded at the time?
So
I wonder.
I'm just finding people discussing more and more
Yeah.
about it. They just, no one actually gets to the point. And all these discussions, including Reddit, is like, I don't know,
Yeah.
1 year, 3 years old, 6 years old. So I don't think
Yeah.
anyone's gonna get into it now. But I'm still on it. I still keep finding it whenever I'm just like, oh, I have nothing to do. Let's find Roadhouse Blues live. Yeah, but so again, one last bit is that the band wanted to add this live version because there's a flow of music throughout the four members. Like here, there are parts where the instruments are taking over and Jim is following it, and there are parts where Jim is taking over and the instruments are following it. By instruments, I mean Ray, Robbie, and John. And it's really crazy of how how wild they get with the music, because they're just on and on, like they're just playing, and they're playing the same riff over and over again, but it feels new all throughout the song, and then it ends with a bang. All right, and that all right is actually where Matthew McConaughey gets his all right from.
I remember you mentioned this before as well to me, that's how it was inspired by Jim's performance.
It will always come in use. It's coming in use now. So so then we see the peak of the Doors, and we hear this fan crying out that, I know you're Sagittarius. That, and you're like, yeah, baby, I am a Sagittarius. The most philosophical of all the signs.
The most philosophical of all the signs.
So we then go on to World on Fire.
Taxi from Africa.
Which is like Morrison realizing that he's becoming, or what he was becoming at the time, a symbol of sex, or he's just people's entertainment, but that's not that's how dark the poetry goes. He's not just an entertainment. He's wanting to be a guide from so much negative. At the time, I think it was the Vietnam War in the 70s.
I think so.
Do you remember?
I mean, I'm not very well versed, but one thing I did notice is that this track, when I was looking it up online, I don't think this track, The World on Fire, was listed in the original album release, but it's listed in this sort of remastered bonus track version.
Bonus track.
So it does make me wonder whether this track was completely missing, or did they just add, I don't know, this part at the beginning of the next song or something. But yeah, I did notice that it was missing from the song list.
Yeah, true. It could be like it could kind of go into Lament, which is the next song. And
Lament for my
Lament
cock,
is just,
sore and crucified.
Jim being, kind of sarcastic. Like, this is that's what you want, right? Because I think that's the New Haven incident where he just went all out. He's like, what do you want from me? I'm here to give you music, but what do you want? And everyone, just started saying different things.
Well, one thing I noticed in terms of the music in Lament is, I really like that there's like this, like a slide guitar tune going on. And it really reminds me of some of like the Pink Floyd music as well, especially with the slide guitar tunes. And it was very reminiscent of that in Lament.
Monsters of skin. Each color connects to create the boat which rocks the race.
I can't put my finger on it. You need to send me the
when you hear it now, just hear the you'll notice it.
I'll just
now that
I will I will yeah.
Because it goes throughout that song. There's like a slide guitar that's like playing.
Besides that, I think besides his realizations in sarcasm and that he's still shaking people up. It's the birth of James Douglas Morrison, I think, right? Of a poet of sex and death and other such stuff. And my Lizard King in leather pants. I've actually written down just few words. A prophet, if not a saint. So Lament ends with one sentence, which is one verse, I would say. I pressed her thigh and death smiled, which is like it's through the interviews that I decipher this. It's like life begins with sex and ends at death. So it's like I pressed her thigh and death smiled is just like a, just kind of.
It's an interesting way to bring it full circle. Like the way he views death is like
exactly
birth, like in the sense of relating it back, very primal in a way.
I mean, his birth is also like what we say that he used a line. There's a quote by him for his birth which says, I don't remember when I was born, must have been one of my blackouts. It's like, okay. So we then go on to the Hitchhiker.
The Hitchhiker stood by the side of the
Hitchhiker
road
is
and leveled
a portion
his
from
thumb.
Highway, which Highway and American Pastoral was a movie that Jim was, I think he didn't make it. I think I've seen it. It's about an hour long. I don't know. So anyway, so it's from that where he's calling someone. He's like,
it's like a I really like that Riders on the Storm, and then that sort of confession being laid in. It just works so well.
It's so this also has another story branching out of it, where it's Robbie Krieger, the guitarist. He really strongly felt that Riders on the Storm Riders on the Storm was one of their best music pieces. Not in his words, not one of the best songs, but one of the best music pieces. And that would have taken the band to maybe a new direction that they could have kind of explored. But yeah, and they just, I think it's just added in there just for that reason, I think so. Because, because it's just that confession, but it's playing with the Riders on Storm
it works really well.
So it's exactly. So I mean, I'll give a 2 thumbs up. So we then have An American Prayer.
Do you know the warm progress under the stars? Do you know we exist?
It's a collective of what Morrison wanted his fellow countrymen to see, feel, maybe, I don't know. What do you remember American Prayer?
Yeah, so I mean, to me, it kind of felt about sort of like media coverage of war, and like our perception of what's happening on the front lines tied in with political agendas. And I think it's very layered, but I think definitely feels very much based around war and the perception of war, or the media coverage of how it's shown, or what elements are picked and what are not picked, or depicted.
Yeah, I guess his poetry was obviously inspired from the military kid's life, and and because his father was in the army, and they were moving around all the time, changing schools, and I think UCLA is what finally changed his life's direction. I think that's when he started embracing his poet. I don't know, I could be wrong. He could have started like a long time back, and I don't know. I'm just thinking of Jim Morrison. So then we've got Hour for Magic.
Resident Mockery, give us an hour for magic.
I think that's just a way of Jim being, he starts like Resident Mockery, give us an hour for magic, give us the purple glove. So that's, I think it's talking about his stardom, his stardom that he's getting right now, the fame he's getting, but he doesn't want it. He wants to be heard. He wants to be seen as a poet, and than a rock star that he was becoming. And that's the reason he went to Paris.
Yeah, the guitar riff sort of sounded similar to the song "The End." I know it reminded me of The End quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, it does. I think that's the magic. The end is the magic. And then we move to Freedom Exists. And did you know freedom exists in the school books? And
did you know freedom exists
the
in
most
the school book?
apt line for even today's education system, I would say. I don't know, in the parts of the world that I know of the education system, that is. And it's just he's just discussing his chains as a god of rock. Even though he's a god of rock, he's got chains. Like, it's, I don't know, it's not, it's paradoxical, but that's what it is. He just can't get free of those, those expectations of him.
Like, you feel, even though he has
break out.
This big status, and he's this big symbol, and he's got all this fame and fortune, he still feels very tied down by like, there's always that relatable aspect of we think celebrities, sometimes people think, celebrities have very happy lives or they're very satisfied, but I think some things are universal. Like the human struggle is very universal to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, true. It really, and freedom exists also kind of captures you back into the words, like tracks, how the tracks have gone. We didn't follow that, but there are tracks where you get lost in the words. There are tracks you get lost in the music, and you
back
just
and
kind
forth.
of keep. Yeah, and this is where you come back to his words, and that's how it starts, and then you just get to know more about Jim Morrison. So we then go to A Feast of Friends.
Prefer A Feast of Friends to a giant family.
I think that's that's A Feast of Friends.
Yeah, I mean, I have a I just wrote down this which is that death makes angels of us all.
Death makes angels of us all and gives us
where we had shoulders, smooth as ravens' claws. And I think that it's again one of those things where you just get lost in his delivery and the way he says it. It draws you in. And really, I think a lot of these songs wouldn't work with someone else saying it. It really, his voice and his delivery, the way he does it just really draws you into it.
Have you noticed even his breath is very clear in the tracks, right? Every breath he's taking, you can hear it, and you can hear him going out of breath.
It's very raw. It's not like, because usually with songs, when the singers are singing and at times when they do take a deep breath, that's turned down so you don't hear it. So the track sounds very smooth and effortless from the singer's part.
I think we should save this bit for the conclusion of that. So we've got Feast of Friends, which is like a rebel trying to say why there shouldn't be like a negative hierarchy, or questioning why there is war taking place instead of peace and music. And I think that's also about how he wants the community that he is now a part of, or how people put it, hippie community. I don't know why though, but but anyway, so that community is being mentioned here, and that they could bring in more peace, more a change in the affairs of, at least America at the time. And I don't know, it's just, we need to go line by line
to dissect it.
I'll just say it again. So we'll skip all of his Feast of Friends and then just go to Babylon Fading.
Then we hear a whistle like a bosun's pipe.
Or what America had promised its citizens of, and what it was actually giving to them. I mean, I wasn't part of it, obviously, and I wasn't part of the time. But it's just, I mean, you hear sounds of war also coming in, because he's trying to bring in art or words into it, and obviously the dubbing has brought in some helicopter sounds and some war sounds. It's in random.
And I mean, it ties back into,
I don't know if it's
just like the title of the album being An American Prayer. So it sort of just ties. But I think these are, so I looked at the original track listing, and that ends at An American Prayer. And so I think even, I'm not sure if A Feast of Friends and Freedom Exists and The Hours of Magic, if they were part of An American Prayer originally, or again, were they missing from the original release? And then now Babylon Fading, but yeah,
Fading,
these
yeah.
weren't included as well, I think, in the original track list. So I was curious, but I think, on the streaming, they only had the bonus track version, which has all of these tracks. Yeah.
Now that you're saying that these songs weren't there, I think I have come across, I think on YouTube there was a playlist, an old playlist or something, where these songs weren't there. I think it was the time when streaming services weren't as
Yeah, I'm
spread
just
out
looking
as
at
now.
the track listing right now. I just opened it. So what I think it was originally, the track number 5 was called An American Prayer, and it's listed at 6 minutes 52 seconds. If we go to the remastered version, An American Prayer is only 3 minutes. So I think Our for Magic, Freedom Exists, and A Feast of Friends were combined into An American Prayer as one track. And then, Babylon Fading, Bird of Prey, and Ghost Song, the extended version, these 3 last ones weren't there at all. So Babylon Fading, I think, was not there in the original release. But hey, guys, if you know more, then let us know in the comments. If you have the original version, the original release somewhere. Maybe we should hunt down that vinyl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We need to. Yeah, so... Yeah, then we've got
Bird of Prey,
and
Bird
that's
of
just
Prey.
that's like a call out to freedom. I think what if you just go with the imagery that Morrison is he's very well expressing. He's just looking at a bird flying free, and he's just calling out to it like, take me on your flight.
Yeah.
Right? Like it ends with that.
It feels like he just saw a bird flying and he just wrote down some lines thinking about that bird that he's looking at, sort of. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And he just wanted to go with it, maybe. I don't know. Just fly.
Well, if you're it's one of those things where if you're going through a period of your life where you're feeling tied down or chained or however you want to say, I think the imagery of a bird flying really represents freedom. You feel that bird is really free; it can go anywhere. It's not tied to the ground.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of that going on.
True. So we come to the final track, which is the Ghost Song. And I think it's a celebration of life, of future, a future that's being. That's my take from it. Where when there's that silence and
that bonus
like
at the end,
one more
sort
thing.
of like you think the track has ended, and then
that's
one more thing.
That's a real bonus.
No,
I don't understand when people
I've had
write,
other albums where I've seen that as well.
bonus track.
There's a Good Charlotte album that has a bonus track in a similar way where the track just ends, and the first time I heard that bonus track, and I'm sure for a lot of people with this track it might have been the same experience where you think the album's ended and then you go around doing your stuff at home, while your music player is still playing, and then suddenly you start hearing something and you're like, wait, what happened?
One more thing.
That really is, I think that's what originally is meant by a bonus track, almost, that it's sort of hidden in there at the end.
Yeah. And I think let's take on Good Charlotte and see where did that bonus track idea come from. So basically this ends with that line, right? Splitting headache from which the future is made. So that's, I think, what I could get out of it, or that's my perception of it, is that um, that's more like a, you're making a future, or people are making a future, the officials, the
Yeah.
admirals, uh, the world is making a future with a headache, a headache kind of um, sort of denoting pain and suffering, and we do also hear pain and suffering in a lot of the
Yeah.
previous tracks, and that's not how he supports it. That I have a splitting headache from which the future is made, so we don't need to have a headache to make a future. We can make a future without that, because then obviously we have the thank you, O Lord, for the white
Yeah.
blind light.
Thank you, O Lord, for the white
So
blind
yeah,
light.
and I think that
Mm-hmm.
sums up very, very briefly in about 46 minutes Jim Morrison's life as the remaining members wanted to
Mm-hmm.
describe it in his words,
Yeah.
in his voice, in his
Yeah.
way. And yeah, we can get back to the point where you were talking
Yeah. I was
about
just.
the
Yeah, I think,
album.
well, just summarizing, I guess, one of the things is that, and we sort of mentioned this before, is, this, it feels ironic that this was released after his death, but it feels very raw, Jim Morrison, like at his, least processed, or whatever you could say, least sort of commercialized,
True.
very sort of true to him. And it goes to what we were saying about the way the audio is. You can sort of hear his sort of breaths in between. It's not, it's not like pop music where everything is engineered to sound very effortless. It's very raw in that sense. But really, it's not. At the risk of oversimplifying it, I just, this whole album to me, it's almost like a fever dream acid trip where there's a lot of understanding. There's a lot of processing, and things have hidden meanings, and those hidden meanings have hidden meanings, but really it's poetry and it's art, and it's Jim Morrison.
James
Yeah.
Douglas Morrison. Yeah, I think that I I don't want to sum it up, guys, because I don't know how to
Yeah.
sum it up. I mean, there's still so much to talk about, but I guess we'll get to that eventually.
We'll just have like a series of videos dedicated to Jim Morrison and some of his
We
some of
should
his
have a series of videos.
yeah.
So that's as I've written, the poet, the legend, the rebel, the god of rock, Jim Morrison. All synonymous, and I think that covers An American Prayer, and whew, that felt so good.
You've been waiting to get all of this out.
Yeah,
You've been listening to this album for so long now, and just Doors in general. You've been waiting to get all of this
I
out.
just wanted to really talk this.
Yeah.
Yes, I just really wanted to talk this out. It was, as I guess I'll bring up another quote next time.
Cool.
So thank you for tuning in, and please let us know if you've got any hidden perceptions or hidden meanings that you know of about this album. And yeah, we will see you next week, next time. Until then.
All hail the American night.
One more thing. Words dissemble, words be quick, words resemble walking sticks. Plant them, they will grow. watch them waver. So
Nice.
they kind of, so well, not kind of. They, let me start this again. While the band was dubbing the music,